Hey everyone, welcome to an episode of the Diamond Diaries, a podcast about women in baseball, hosted by a woman in baseball, yours truly, Chelsea Raymer. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. It's so nice to finally virtually meet you. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
exactly. After seeing each other on Twitter and whatnot.
I know, so I feel like I followed you for a really long time, so I'm super excited.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me.
Of course, yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here. I'm so glad to finally meet virtually. I always love reading your content and seeing all of your stuff. So I'm excited to know more about you and all the awesome things you do in baseball. But the first couple of questions I love to start with is can you tell me a little bit about where you're from and then how sports were part of your life before working in the industry full time?
Yeah, definitely. I was born in Central Florida and I grew up going to Brevard County Manatees baseball game, so a minor league team. And I just would go there with my family. My parents were big sports fans. So I was just always a part of my life growing up. I moved to Southern California when I was 9, and I remember these boys in my class like saying like, "Oh, the Manatees aren't a real team," and I'm like, "Yes, they are. They're a real team." Because at the time, I didn't, I guess, grasp the concept of major league versus minor league. But yeah, so that was like some early memories, and then yeah, just always baseball has always been my favorite sport, I would say, especially starting around like 2005, 2004. I started paying attention more and getting into it. And then I started playing softball in high school because I was a fan of baseball, and then it just grew from there.
Oh, that's awesome. So when you finally moved to Southern California, what was the team that you rooted for?
Um, it was a little transitional period, but I became a Yankees fan pretty soon
Oh.
after that, after a few years. Yeah, just always grew up liking the city of New York and the prestige of the Yankees franchise and the history. And so that was just something that I was really drawn to. I mean, how can you not root for Derek Jeter unless you're a Red Sox fan, of course.
Was he your favorite player?
He was, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I even made my dad read his autobiography because I was reading it and I wanted someone to talk to about it because I really liked his work ethic, his idea of, playing hard and practicing hard even when no one's watching. That's something that I still try to do even in work.
That's awesome. So I guess even though I grew up a Red Sox fan, I will forgive you for being a Yankees fan because I know that you are also a Missouri Tiger and I'm also a Missouri Tiger. So that's so awesome. So being, in Southern California since the time you're about 9, how did you end up choosing Mizzou?
Yeah, so my dad is from St. Louis, so I had relatives who went to Mizzou, but it was a big part of it was the journalism school, as you know, and maybe some listeners will know that Mizzou had the first journalism school in the world, so we're very proud of that. So I was really drawn to that. I also just really liked the campus. It was just a very classic, like there's a big quad and there's columns and sports and Greek life and all the things I imagined college to be. It fit all that mold. But definitely the Missouri Journalism School was the biggest draw.
At what age did you know you wanted to pursue sports journalism as a career?
I think that, probably high school was when I really got into it, but I always had an interest of informing people. I remember in sixth grade, it was hailing outside, which is not common in Southern California. And I remember being very excited to be the first person to tell everybody in the classroom, like, hey, look, there's hail. And so I think that kind of like transitioned, and also I always loved writing into kind of, okay, like maybe journalism is the right path. And then I thought about that, and I never really had an interest in hard news or political journalism and things like that. I enjoyed sports and following sports, so it just felt like a natural combination of those things.
So, since you had family in St. Louis, did you go to the Mizzou's campus at all growing up?
No, not at all. It's funny, I don't really have any memories of Mizzou until I think it was 2008. There was a big football game while my cousin was getting married in St. Louis. And so it was on the TV, like between the reception and the ceremony. And so I remember like everyone was like really into it. So I was like, okay, like I had just applied there. So I was like, this is kind of interesting.
Oh, nice. When did you first officially like visit or like step on campus for the first time?
Yeah, so that was in actually now that I think about it, that was spring of 2008. So my senior year or junior year, yeah, I guess junior year, I did a spring break or spring break visit and looked at some college campuses.
So, going from the West Coast to a small, college town in the middle of Missouri, what was that kind of transition like?
Yeah, it was definitely different. The weather obviously was the biggest thing. I hadn't really experienced much snow, especially enough to like make a snowball. Like we used to go to St. Louis for Thanksgiving to see my grandparents, but it usually would start snowing like the day after we left. So, and then we have some fake snow at the mountains here. So that was like the coolest thing. It was also just different variety of people, like a lot more different types of diversity than in Southern California. So that was really cool. I think it was also interesting that the journalism school has a lot of people from international countries come for the J school. So I like got to meet a lot of people from a lot of different types of backgrounds.
So, I know you said you really like to write, and I saw you were an intern for a Missouri sports blog, and then you were a sports reporter for the local newspaper, the Columbia Missourian. Can you kind of talk about that transition from writing to a blog to then, going out and reporting on sports for the Missourian?
Yeah, so as soon as I got there, I knew that sports reporting was what I wanted to do. So I just started researching and trying to figure out where I could write. And I found the Missouri Sports blog. So I started doing some like clips for that. I I don't even think I had a press pass. It was just me writing 3 paragraphs or 4 paragraphs after a game I went to anyway. But it was still good experience to kind of get into that rhythm. And then what I mentioned, the Missouri method that Mizzou has is that you learn by doing, as I know you know. And so instead of just working at the local or at the student paper, which there's nothing wrong with that, at Mizzou you work at the local paper. So the Columbia Missourian, the broadcast students work at an NBC affiliate, and that's part of the learning as part of the classes. So I really enjoyed working at the Missourian. I started out covering the Columbia College and Stevens College volleyball teams. So those are NAIA, so it's very small. But it was my first experience of a beat. I remember the first day with Columbia College, actually Stevens College, I was like, okay, like I want to ask the whole team questions. So I had them all sit down and answer questions. And then I quickly realized that, like on my tape recorder, I wouldn't be able to know who said what because it's my first day in the players. So I had the players say their name and then give their quote. So it was just kind of instantly learning on the fly. And then I covered the softball team for KBIA, which was an NPR affiliate, but at the time it was as Mizzou was trying to figure out multimedia. So it was a blog that had video editing and photography and writing. So it was kind of a mix of everything. And then my senior year, I covered the softball team for the Missourian, which was great because the Mizzou softball team was arguably the best team at Mizzou during my 4 years. So it was, even though it wasn't necessarily football or men's basketball, like the big ones, it was a really good team with a great program and great pitching and managing and things like that. So.
Since you started as a sports reporter at the Missouri, and I saw you also were, later on copy editor and then an advanced reporter, can you kind of tell me on how it was working your way up in the newsroom?
Yes, so I did enjoy that because of these journalism classes, you do take a variety. So there was the copy editing. I still remember that the Missourian style was always home run. You couldn't say homers or dingers or anything like that. So you had to say 2 run home run. And that was so annoying, but you follow style, and so I will always keep that. Also, my senior year, I was part of page design, so helping take the copy and fit it into the page for the newspaper, which was really cool and definitely not something that I will probably ever do again, sadly, but the concept of it and feeling like a part of history. My most memorable clips are still newspaper clips that I have from the Missourian, and I also interned at the Orange County Register. So having those like physical media is pretty cool.
So when you were working at those newsrooms, how many women were typically in the sports department at that time?
Not many. So when I first was in the sports department at the Missourian, I think there were two other women, but then as I moved up to advanced reporting, there weren't any. But there were women in other parts of the newsroom, like so the photography and editing and so I would never was like the only woman in the room. It just was the only
Mhm.
one necessarily working with my specific editor. So
So
it
were
was
you,
definitely
oh, say sorry, were you typically surrounded by male reporters as well on all of the beats you covered?
yes, in the news or in the press box, definitely. But also the thing about like small press boxes is that it's not just the media, it's also the national anthem singer and the person operating the scoreboard and the person who has to run and get the foul balls. So it wasn't just there was definitely women I was around, even if the reporters were mostly male.
Did you have ever have that feeling of imposter syndrome or like anytime you kind of doubted yourself and just had to like take a step back and really like overcome that?
It's funny. I don't think I always joke I'm too insecure to have imposter syndrome. Like I don't think I've if that makes sense. Like I don't think I've ever, and this probably sounds ridiculous, but I don't think I've ever had a role where I'm like, wow, this is too good for me. Because I guess maybe I'm probably more likely to think less about my circumstances. I'm like, well, if I have this job, it's not that big of a deal, I guess. So it's a different form of self-doubt. But yeah, that definitely does exist in different forms.
At the time when you're going through college, are there any women who were already in the sports industry that you really looked up to?
Yeah, so Jennifer Langosh, who was the Cardinals beat reporter and the Pirates beat reporter, she's now an editor at MLB.com. I thought she was great. She went to Mizzou and she had the same editor I had, Greg Bowers. So she came to the classroom a couple times to talk to us. And it was really interesting to see because our editor, Greg, was very hard-nosed and he believed what he believed. And so here was this woman who went through his program, had success, and was coming back and was able to like go nose to nose with him about like what actually makes sense in the real world and how things get accomplished.
Okay, and then I'm dying to know what is your favorite Mizzou tradition?
Hmm, that's a tough one. I don't know. It's actually been a few years since I've been there. I do think it's really cool that there's the main columns there. So I like that you go one direction your freshman year, and then you go through it the other direction when you graduate. And I think that's a cool, like symbolic, but also literally
Mhm.
doing it.
Yeah. What else were you part of at Mizzou? Were you in like Greek life or anything outside of journalism?
Yeah, so I was an Alpha Chi Omega sorority, and that was great. It's interesting. A lot of sorority girls that I knew were in marketing or strategic communications or stratcom and magazines. So I didn't really have that many friends in journalism. But then when I found a sorority sister who was a photographer at the Missourian or maybe worked at the magazine down the hall, it like created a new bond and a new connection with them.
That's awesome. I know a lot of kids always seem to ask the question of how do they find the right school for them. So I know you said you had family in St. Louis and you were tied to the or you looked at the journalism school. What advice would you give to those, students in high school who are maybe trying to find the right fit for them?
I would say that apply to a variety if you can. I know that now I imagine the prices of like I think you have to apply to a school, so like that's pretty wild. But I applied to 14 schools and really like didn't like shoehorn it too early. And then over those 6 months or so, when I was visiting schools and I was actually thinking more about what I wanted, I think like there were there were probably blogs. I don't they probably have a version of this on Reddit now, but it was just kind of like looking people like describe the campus as like, and like, do you want to have a downtown to go to? Like, do you care about like going to an SEC football game? Like, I guess just thinking about what you're interested in. and the size, I thought about studying statistics at one point, or at least minoring in that because I like math and I thought that was had a baseball tie-in. And I took one class, and luckily it was a repeat of like an AP stats class I took in high school, but it was just way too large. Like I didn't like learning math in a lecture setting. So like that's the type of thing to just kind of think about of what you're really looking for.
Awesome. And so I think it's great that you're in New York since you said it's a city you really admired when you were young. So after Missouri, you made your way to New York to work for MILB as an editorial producer, which is so cool. Did you ever actually imagine yourself in New York? Like, did you think it would really happen? Was it kind of like a full circle moment getting to move to the city?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up watching the show Friends, like and watching, like every rom-com takes place in New York, and even though Friends wasn't shot in New York, the B-roll was. So it just always felt like that's what you do. This is the greatest city. So my best friend from home got a job there a couple months out of college, and she's like, "Move with me," and I was like, "Okay." Like I hadn't gotten a job yet, but I just moved there, and I had already or applied for my job at MILB, but I didn't interview for it until after I moved to New York, and got it about 2 months after moving there. So it worked out. And then I actually back in Southern California now. I lived in New York for 9 years, and I still think it's the greatest city. I just have grown and realized I don't need to live in the greatest city anymore.
Yeah.
I'm closer to family. I have two nephews. It's great to be near, and I don't have to deal with the snow.
Yeah, no, I definitely, the snow, even in Maine, is so tough. I don't think anything prepares you for a snowstorm. Well, is it hard watching Yankee games with the 3 hour time difference?
Yes, that is definitely true. But although I will say, in general, though, I think just working at MLB and working in the industry, I've become, I would say, a little bit less of a fan because I'm more of a fan of all of baseball. I especially following the minor leagues, seeing so many guys come through, and so it's kind of becoming it's like that Rob Lowe photo of him wearing the NFL hat to football games. It's like I like all of the players now, and it's nice to root for all of them.
So now you're a senior coordinator with the company. Can you tell me a little bit about your role and everything that it entails?
Yeah, so I when I first started, I was reporting for MILB.com, and then I transitioned to focus on social media with some writing. And then in 2021, MILB.com and MLB Pipeline merged. So the people who do the rankings and all that stuff, which it makes sense. We're a lot of overlap between our two departments. So now I help oversee all the social media for MILB and MLB Pipeline. So it's a lot of Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Threads. And it's funny, my job sometimes will be graphic requests. So just grabbing photos and explaining what I want to a designer and then going through and QAing it, editing it, and then posting it. Um, but the thing about the minor leagues is there's so much variety to it. So this Thursday, January 15th, is a big day for our department because it's National Hat Day, which minor league teams love having a variety of hats, as you know. And then also the beginning of the international signing period. So major league teams can sign players from the Dominican and Venezuela. Um, so it's a very big day for the minor leagues in terms of players and clubs. So it shows a good variety of what I do.
Sounds like you're kind of constantly busy, but how does everything with your schedule and day-to-day life kind of differ when the minor league season is happening versus the off season?
Yeah, so I used to work nights during the season. When I first started, it was 8 p.m. to 2 a.m.
Oh.
Luckily now I work 9 to 5 all year round, but that's 12 to 8 Eastern time. So it's kind of a swing shift of working with the day crew and then also the night crew when games are going on. I would say during the season, it's a lot more reactionary. Like this cool thing happened. Like, how do we, cut a highlight or do something fun with it? Versus during the off season, it's more thinking ahead and strategy and being like, okay, there's nothing going on. What should we post? And trying to think of a meme or something like that.
So, it seems like you've covered so many different events in your career, from like the fall league to the draft to traveling to so many different ballparks. So, I really want to know, do you have a favorite event that you've covered so far?
Um, there's definitely been a lot of good ones. I would say this is kind of a cheat answer, but every year the AAA National Championship I get to cover. And that's, it's just a single game between the winner of the International League and the winner of the Pacific Coast League. A lot of people say it doesn't really matter because they've already won their league. It's just a single game, which is weird for baseball. But the players still really get into it. And that's always like the one time I get to actually watch players celebrate. So like do those champagne and sparkling cider celebrations afterwards. And it's just really cool to see, all of that hard work the players put in come together in that moment.
Nice. And then out of all the minor league parks that you visited so far, do you have a favorite?
Oh, that's a tough one. I mean, I think Brooklyn is a great one. It's right there in Coney Island on the park. Um, Let's see. I'm excited to see the new Ontario one. That's close to me-ish. The Dodgers' new single A. I've driven past it when it was under construction, and it looks really nice. They no longer have a team, but I've always loved the Brevard County Stadium since it was my first stadium.
Oh, and then is there a minor league park you are still dying to visit that you haven't been to yet?
I would say Charlotte has the best view with the city skyline. That's a great one. And then also Salt Lake. They had an incredible view and then they moved and still have a beautiful view of the mountains in Salt Lake. So I would love to see that. And then, of course, just the lazy river in Frisco would be fun.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. I grew up like 20 minutes from the Frisco Stadium and I went all the time as a kid, but I've never gotten to go in the lazy river. And anytime I go home, it's always during the winter. And even though we don't really have winter in Texas, like they still don't have it open. So
Ah.
that's on my list too. But that's my big regret growing up is not taking advantage of that ballpark more when it was 20 minutes from me.
Yeah, well, that's fair. But if that's your biggest regret, you're living life good.
Okay. And then, okay, what is your favorite ballpark food?
I mean, I'm a traditionalist in this sense. I always get a hot dog with ketchup on one side, mustard on another, relish in the middle.
Okay.
Of course, yeah, exactly. But now that, like in the Arizona Fall League, when I am at the ballpark, 5 times a week or, double headers, things like that, I'm obviously not getting a hot dog every time. So, I mean, I would say popcorn is, I mean, that's my favorite food in general. So I definitely get that at ballparks a lot.
Since you are so involved with just about all the minor league teams, is there a favorite promotion you have ever seen a team do? I've seen people give away like underpants to do like a pregnancy test ticket deals, or do you have one that sticks out in your head?
There's definitely been some wild ones. I feel like I feel bad. I don't remember the team right now, but there was one team who had a Karen night,
Oh.
and I think you got a free ticket if your name was Karen, and also people dressed up with like a wig and outfits of what they imagined a Karen to look like, and I thought that was kind of nice because there is now a stereotype with the name Karen, for better or worse, but I imagine there are a lot of great Karens out there. So it was nice that they got to be celebrated too.
Do you have a favorite story that you have written so far?
Mm, I don't know. I feel like every time I write a new one, that's my favorite. So, but I will say, I guess it was 2024 now. I wrote about Jackson Jobe, the Tigers pitcher, and his dad, who's a professional golfer. And it was kind of cool to see the parallels between the two of them. And, because Jackson's dad was hurt, was on the injured list for golf while Jackson was on the injured list. So it was really interesting to hear those connections.
Do you have a favorite memory from anything you've done in the past?
Um, I mean, we've definitely talked about a lot of good ones. I would say, and I guess related to favorite story is Mark Appel has always been one of my favorite players. He was a number one overall draft pick twice, and he, you know, was very good, like highly touted, and then had some injuries, but he was always very honest and forthcoming about what was going on, and um, and how frustrating it is to have injuries and to not pitch as well as you want to. So I feel like he's someone I wrote about when he was in the minors a lot, and then he stepped away from the game, and then he was making a comeback with the Phillies to be a reliever. So during spring training, I had talked to him, and I had like started writing the story, but not really. I just had the pieces of it. And then one night after logging off of work, I think it was like 1 a.m. Eastern time, we find out that he's going to get called up the next day. So I was like, well, now I got to finish this story because like it was so, it was so meaningful to me. And I felt that his story was such an interesting one that he had the like highs and the lows and everything and still had his faith and his hope and was still trying. So luckily I was able to finish that story and it went live. And then he didn't make his debut immediately because he's a reliever, but like it was an exciting time to like have that all come together. I'm sure even more for him, but but I enjoyed it too.
I love hearing about, everyone's favorites in the baseball industry, but to go back to a few more serious questions, what would you say is your biggest challenge in your position?
Um, well, there are definitely a lot of benefits to being national, but I do think that sometimes we don't get to know the players as well as the people who work for clubs like you and others. So it's kind of hard to get to know the players when you just see them at the futures game, spring training, and maybe the fall league. So just kind of bopping in and out. So I would say that definitely like trying to figure out how to get to know them and also make sure that they feel comfortable because at the end of the day, my job is to help share their stories with players and or with fans.
And then my last kind of cliche question, what would you say is the most rewarding part of your job?
Um, I would just say like piggyback of what I just said of just having fans get to know these players as a person, as someone with a skill that most of us don't have. You know, like Max Clark has a cat named Tiger who his then fiance, now wife, brought to a game and like because it was a cat at the park or take me out to the ball game night. And so that was just like such a cool thing. Um, and yeah, there's just so many cool stories in the minor leagues that we get to tell. One of my favorites I recently like reshared on Instagram was that Scott Patterson, who plays the on Gilmore Girls, who plays the diner, Luke, the diner owner. He played in the minor leagues. So it's just there's just so many, there's an infinite number of stories to share. And so being able to help fans learn those stories is really rewarding.
Yeah, you have by far one of the coolest jobs. So what advice would you give to a woman who wants to be in your shoes someday?
Well, thank you. I would say that to embrace what makes them unique. I think that when I first started, I just wanted to be one of the guys and I didn't want to be seen as, a woman in sports or anything like that. Versus now I embrace it. Like I said, that Gilmore Girls story, like not to say that men don't watch Gilmore Girls, but that's definitely something that I thought of and my male coworkers wouldn't have thought of. Um, and like I said, we do a lot of graphics requests, and so we have to find photos where players look good. And some of my coworkers don't think about that because a lot of guys don't think about how you look in a photo, they just post it. Um, and I've gotten feedback from players that they don't like when we post a bad photo of them and things like that. So again, just embracing who you are, and what things you notice that maybe your coworkers or competition don't notice, like that will take you really far.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for jumping on as a guest of the Diamond Diaries. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is a great time.
Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll chat again soon. XOXO, Chelsea.